we are live with the first episode of our podcast. This is Tim.
Charlie. Yeah.
And then we got Kenji on the other end, right?
Yeah.
All right, sweet. All right, so we are 2 races into the season. And then we've got Australia coming up this weekend. So we can talk about what's happened the last 2 race weekends and then our expectations for this weekend. And then we can talk about our rest of the season expectations in a episode next week or so.
All right. That sounds good.
Sounds
So
good, yeah.
does someone want to start with their thoughts on, I guess we can start with, like, Bahrain and going into that weekend?
Well, I mean, I think just generally, like, Red Bull has come out of the gates really strong. I think that's really obvious. I might as well get it out of the way first, right? Like, Red Bull has just been the clear front runner in the championship, and in all of these races, they've just been like 20, 30 seconds ahead. I think in like Bahrain, Verstappen won, but Max won by like 38 seconds. So obviously, Red Bull has been the front runner. And Aston Martin, I think, in these first 2 races has come up really impressively. They've been beating Ferrari in some of these races, picking up a lot of points. So yeah, they've had a really strong start to the season.
Yeah, I mean, Red Bull looks like unstoppable. I've seen stuff like Hamilton saying, and I know Hamilton kind of like overhyped stuff, but I don't think anyone's gonna catch them. And honestly, if there's no like weird race, they'll probably win every race this season. I don't see anyone beating them. Yeah, I mean, Aston Martin is an interesting one. I don't know if they'll finish P2 in the constructors, but it's definitely an interesting start. I guess just like really the battle for third is what will be interesting for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, we see, Aston Martin's a threat, but it really seems like Alonso's the one that's carrying them. Like Lance Stroll was only able to finish 6th, and then he didn't finish at all in the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. And then after that, there's not really anyone. Max beat the 3rd place Alonso by 38 seconds. And then everyone else by almost more than 60. And then same for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, but with Perez. But I do think that Aston Martin can get second, but also we saw Mercedes last year even like make a break for it. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see some major growth from them with Hamilton and Russell, especially in like the second stretch of the season.
Yeah, I mean, Ferrari's looked pretty bad, or at least Leclerc. I mean, what does he have? Like,
I mean, Ferrari has always been kind of like the laughing stock of the paddock, right? I mean, so if I had to choose between Ferrari and Aston Martin for second in the constructors, I would have to go with Aston Martin. But the wild card is, I think, this season is, how strong can Mercedes become? Mercedes, we've seen, sometimes they've had a poor start to the season, but we've always seen them rebound as we go throughout the season. Back in 2018 and 2017, Mercedes started poorly, but as the season went on, it was just blowout, really. And Ferrari always seems to get whatever advantage they had at the start of the season, like last year. The huge advantage they built over Red Bull at the start. So, yeah, I think the wild card here is this Mercedes, and that will determine the race for second.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously they won, what was it, Brazil last year? And then they're level on points with Aston right now because Stroll retired from Jeddah, but it definitely looks like Aston has more pace right now, but Mercedes has better driver or a better team of drivers probably. I think Stroll is honestly a little bit underrated. Like I think people hate on him more than he deserves, but he's not anywhere near Russell or Lewis. So
Yeah, and back to Ferrari. I mean, they are looking even worse than they did last year. I mean, last year they went 1-2 in Bahrain and then a double podium in Saudi Arabia. And this year, Leclerc looks like he has 6 points, and then Sainz uh, has 20. So, like, in the first 2 races, they weren't even able to get as many as they did in one last year. So I don't expect anything from them. I mean, I'm always hoping that Ferrari has a decent season because I don't hate them as a team, but, like, it's just a trend of them, like, just being the laughing stock, as you said. Like, they've just always struggled to, like, put it together in the end.
yeah, I mean they were 6th and 5th, and Leclerc was closer to Ocon than the Mercedes. So I mean, maybe.
It seems. Sorry, Charlie.
No, you can go.
Yeah, it seems like Ferrari, like in the last few seasons, has always just been like that one thing away from the championship. Last year, it was just the consistency. Like we saw their pace at the start of the season, and this year, I think it's just. Well, I don't know actually, because this year it seems like they're lacking both the pace and the reliability. We saw with Leclerc having to replace his engine in the second race of the season, and all the mishaps that went on in Saudi with his engine giving up, the reliability problems, and they've just not been on the pace this year with compared to Red Bull and Aston. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it'll be interesting to see what Ferrari and Mercedes do, because you look at Aston and how they basically just kind of took the main stuff from Red Bull and put their spin on it, and they're faster as of right now. But Mercedes seems pretty committed to the like no side pod thing right now, and the same thing for Ferrari. So I think either they're gonna have to figure out how to make those work, or they might have to switch to the Red Bull approach, or else another team like a Alpine or something could hop in front of them as well.
Yeah, and then also just talking about Alpine, I'm like pleasantly surprised with how they're doing. I wasn't expecting them to do well, even though like Gasly, I'd say he's a pretty good driver just in general. But like I think Charlie at the start of the season was saying that he was expecting them to just be like terrible, but they've had point finishes in both races, and then in Saudi Arabia they had a double point finish in 8th and 9th, Ocon and Gasly respectively. So I'm kind of gonna like look at them as sort of like a sleeper, just like midfield team. Maybe they can make a run for like 4th in the standings if Ferrari has just a terrible season, or if Aston Martin somehow falls off the pace. But other than that, I think Red Bull and Mercedes. I'm hoping Aston Martin can take the second constructors spot, but I mean we already see Mercedes is kind of catching up to Alonso. Which I don't like Mercedes, but I wouldn't be surprised if they take the second spot.
Just building off of that idea of Alpine being the underdogs this season, yeah, I think Alpine is really being slept on. Like, we shouldn't forget that both Ocon and Gasly have won races like in their careers, and obviously, like that's a really strong foundation to build off of. I don't foresee them getting higher than 5th right now, unless any of the top 4 teams like really fall off the pace. Like you mentioned, Tim, I don't see Alpine getting higher than 5th, but I think, yeah, definitely they have a strong foundation to build on this season and into the future.
Yeah, I don't think they can contend with the top 4, but I think kind of what them and McLaren were doing last year. I think they'll kind of just secure that by themselves. I mean, I think Gasly started last in Bahrain, and he got points. And then Ocon had the whole, like, penalty thing in Bahrain. And then they both scored in Jeddah. So they're definitely the best, like, midfield team, best of the rest. Kind of. I guess we want to keep going down the table. Alfa Romeo. I don't really. I think Bottas got points at Bahrain, right?
Yeah, he got P8 in Bahrain, but then he was a lap back in Saudi Arabia.
What happened with Bottas in Saudi? Does anyone know? It seems a bit low for him.
I don't know. I couldn't really watch almost any of the race. I watched a little bit and then the highlights, but I know like what happened to the McLarens and stuff. But looks like you got it.
Yeah, I've got it pulled up right here. It says that he sustained early damage in the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. He started in 14th, then he was a minute down by the end of the race on the person in 17th, Lando. So I don't know. It says floor damage as well, so something happened at the start of the race. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, and Joe, let's see. I don't know. I thought he was all right last year, I think. We'll see if he... Bahrain, he got... So Bahrain, he got 16th. Not much better in Saudi Arabia, so... But that car looks like it has some potential. It's probably the closest to Alpine right now. It looks pretty cool, too.
Yeah, and then we've got AlphaTauri and Williams. I mean, they're not really doing anything. They're just kind of like...
I think a lot of people expected them to be at the back.
Yeah.
But I think Sonoda's gotten 11th both races.
Yeah, he has.
And the Williams... Or Albon got a point, right? Bahrain.
Let me see. Yeah,
Oh.
Albon got P10 in Bahrain.
And then Sargent's looked pretty good.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised, or I'm happy about that too. I mean, he's an American.
De Vries.
Yeah, it's been a massive disappointment. I'll be honest. Like seeing what he's done in the F1's like sister series, if you might call him that, like with Formula E and everything like that, and just seeing him at the back of the pack. I know it's the second race, or we've only had 2 races, but you know, just seeing the way he's performed this year, I'll just say it's been a bit disappointing, to be honest.
Yeah, I saw something about him being in like a lawsuit where he like, it was weird. Some like Dutch banker gave him a loan of like $250,000, but if he didn't make it into F1 after 2023 or 2022, he'd get like half of his career earnings. And so he's saying like, oh, well, I did make it before 2023 because I did that one race last year or something. I don't know. Does that look right?
Yeah, he took out a $250,000 loan to secure an F2 seat in 2018. And then it said that he paid $190,000 in interest, but he didn't have an F1 deal in 2022. So it says because he did not have an F1 deal in place for 2022, he was under the assumption that that the loan would be written off as per the agreement, and that the loan would be waived if he was not an F1 driver. So I don't know. It just looks like messy, like just very critical.
I don't know if that jeopardizes his seat or not, but surely Red Bull have some other dudes that they want to give a shot. I know, like Liam Lawson, and just trying to think of the people from the F1 game, but
It would be cool if they give Ricardo another shot, but I know that's not going to happen. Okay, and then I guess finally we have
the orange tractor.
the McLaren, Piastri and Norris. I don't know. I'm just disappointed. I watched the first race and they were, let's see. Yeah, Lando finished 2 laps down. Piastri didn't even finish.
Jeez, man.
And then the second race, Piastri was 85 seconds down and Lando was 86th, last other than Bottas, who had the issues. So it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of embarrassing. Like, I really wish that they could do better. But, I mean, like, it seems like they have the talent. I don't know if Piastri will prove himself, but Norris already has in spurts. I don't know. It's just disappointing.
I mean, I don't know. It is disappointing. I like McLaren is my team I like, but you could kind of see it last year where they didn't, like, Lando would drag the car up in qualifying. Now sometimes he'd get it as high as like P4, and obviously that was not sustainable. But it's even seems even worse this year. Like Lando got it to like 11 at Bahrain, and Piastri got into Q3 I think at Jeddah, and they're just nowhere in the race really. But I think I don't know. Yeah, it's just sad.
It seems like the Mercedes engine has just been part of the reason why they've been like such a bad, so uncompetitive this year. I was looking at like the data for what we got on Friday, and they're losing a lot of time in the straights. Like they're losing almost like a second on the straights. And I think that's just been a problem, especially lately with the Mercedes engine. Teams like Red Bull and Ferrari have just been so much stronger than the Mercedes engine, especially with Honda. With Red Bull, I think Honda has been part of the reason why Red Bull has been so strong lately. So if Mercedes can sort out the engine issues and McLaren is able to build on what they have regarding the chassis, like they can start to become more competitive again. But until that happens, I see them being the bottom rung of the ladder, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think in Jeddah, I think Gasly hit Piastri and broke his wing, and then Lando ran over his wing. It was just so they both had to pit, and like it was just kind of unlucky. But still, you can see they weren't gonna get anywhere anyway. Like they get Bahrain. Norris was stuck behind the Williams on the straights, and then Sargent passed him. I think it's just not good. I think they were saying like Baku is when they're gonna try and bring a bunch of upgrades, or maybe after Baku. I don't know. Baku's the next race after Australia, but yeah, it's a disappointment. I think I think Norris is very talented. I think he could probably win a championship if he got the right car. So yeah, it's just kind of sad.
Yeah, all right. Were there any other, I guess, comments or things you all saw about the first 2 races, or can we get on to Melbourne?
I'm good. You got anything?
I think we've hit on like everything. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
can't think of anything else.
Yeah, me neither. So we've already had 2 practices for the Australian Grand Prix. The first one, it was Verstappen, Hamilton, Perez, Alonso, and then the second one we had Alonso, Leclerc, Verstappen, Russell in the top 4. I mean, like, we know the practices don't really tell us how the race is going to be. But I don't know. I'm hoping that maybe there could be a fight for a win this week, but I know that is like the Red Bull's just so far ahead.
Yeah, I think as long as Red Bull don't face like any, like if they don't crash, or if they don't have reliability problems. To be fair, they did have some reliability problems in Jeddah. Saw Verstappen having that weird issue with, I think it was the drive shaft. Perez having some reliability issues too, reporting some over the radio. As long as those don't affect Red Bull, though, I think they're basically a shoe-in for the win. I think it's basically a certainty that Verstappen will take it again. We've seen some issues though with Red Bull, especially with the wet weather and everything like that. Verstappen reporting some issues regarding the setup. Do you guys think that will have any impact on the race, or do you think it will just be worked out?
I feel like Verstappen's always saying something that gets your hopes up, like there might be an issue, but nothing really comes of it. I mean, we saw him start wherever he started last time, and I mean, when I turned on the race, it was like lap 25, and he was already like in second by far. So, we'll see if Perez can challenge him. Perez didn't look very good in Bahrain compared to Max, but he held him at about 6 seconds distance for the last 15 laps or so at Jeddah, so hopefully he can give him a little battle. Got the Instagram bots following me. Jeez.
I'll be honest, I don't see Perez like challenging Verstappen over the season. Maybe over a race, yeah, like we saw in Bahrain. Perez was able to fight Verstappen like really well, really impressed. But I guess with Verstappen starting in, God, what was it, like 14th or 12th or something like that? It was kind of an unfair fight from the beginning, right? So over one race, yeah, maybe Perez can take the fight to Verstappen, but over the season, I think Verstappen is still the dominant driver by far, especially considering Red Bull's power dynamics.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of a Hamilton-Bottas situation. Like, Bottas at times he would show like sparks of like really good driving, but Hamilton was just clearly the better driver by far. And also like kind of like Max is Red Bull's golden boy. Like, I mean, Perez is an amazing driver, but Max is their favorite, I'd say. And he's also like, I don't know, he's probably the best driver on the grid, like by far, in the best car in the grid. So like those two together, like I don't think anyone's gonna be able to challenge him. Although I wish someone could.
Yeah, I don't. It looks like it's gonna be a dry race, even though apparently FP2 is wet. I don't. We'll see. I think qualifying will probably. I mean, we've seen Ferrari get up there in qualifying a couple times, and Aston. So qualifying will probably be interesting. I've heard there's like a 4th DRS zone at Melbourne this year. We'll see if that plays any part. I don't know if it will, but I think that track in general, it's just a little tricky, even with the like relay or new layout.
Yeah, so I guess we could make like predictions about the race, like who we think the podium's gonna be. Like we could talk about who might be a good person to watch. So I guess I'm just gonna go with, I think it's gonna be another Red Bull 1-2. And then I'd say I wouldn't be surprised to see a Mercedes sneak into that podium this weekend. Like maybe Hamilton. I don't know. I'll go with Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton, which is kind of boring, but like it's very like I feel like that's what we're gonna see a lot this week or this year. Either that or the two Red Bulls with Alonso.
Yeah, I think Verstappen and Perez are basically just the favorites for one, another 1-2, just based on how Red Bull has been so dominant this season. I think honestly, over Alonso and the Mercedes, I would take Alonso. Just just seeing the pace he's had this weekend over the first two practice sessions. And yeah, I know the second practice was wet, but obviously the Alpines have, or not the Alpines, goodness, the Aston Martins have showed some really great downforce, and that's kind of the reason why they've been able to perform so exceptionally in wet conditions. And I think they'll be able to translate that over to dry conditions, considering the layout of Melbourne and how it's pretty downforce. Yes, it really favors downforce. So I think, like I said, I'd take Alonso for the last spot on the podium over the two Mercedes.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you, Kenji. Alonso, I mean, he got a lap in, I think, before it started raining to top the session, but he still clearly like has a lot of experience and quickness at this track. I think last year didn't, if I'm remembering correctly, he like almost there was on like two purple sectors in Q3 in the Alpine and then crashed in qualifying. But so he clearly like knows how to put in a good lap around this track. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets on the front row to start maybe. I think Ferrari might do better than Mercedes this weekend. I remember last year I think they got a 1-2 at Melbourne, so yeah, I'll go Alonso with it, and then maybe like a sleeper pick. I think Tsunoda will get points. I mean, he's gotten just outside both times, so he's clearly like, I think he knows his seat is kind of on the line and is showing his stuff. So
Yeah, I think I'm gonna want to look at Alpine this weekend. I think that they'll just be an interesting team to watch throughout the season, but I want to see if they have the consistency that they did in the first two races. Maybe see a double point finish between Gasly and Ocon. Maybe just like 8th, 9th, 8th, 10th, 9th, 10th. But I don't know. I mean, they're not really. I don't know. I just hope that they do well. So I'm just gonna be watching them this weekend. And then also, let's see. I mean, Tsunoda is also going to be a sleeper, like Charlie said. He's performing well, or has been. But, yeah, I just say the Alpine and then Tsunoda if he can pull off a good race.
hopefully it's somewhat exciting. I think last year Max engine gave out again, so we'll see. Or actually no, Ferrari didn't get a 1-2 because Sainz like crashed last year in the opening lap. I don't know. Yeah, definitely some interesting stuff can happen at this track. We'll see. I saw Norris got in the top 10 both times in practice, so that at least gets my hopes up. But yeah, no. I think the race will probably start at like 1 a.m. So it's gonna be probably won't be able to watch that one. We'll see.
Yeah, that was my grandma that just walked in. But anyway, yeah. Any closing thoughts or remarks? I don't have anything else.
No, yeah, I think I'm good too.
No, I don't really got anything. excited for qualifying. I might stay up for that. But should be let's see, battle for third is what I think we're all looking at.
Yeah, and then I guess next Friday, we can do the same thing. Look at Australia, and then there's not a race. I think Baku's not till late April,
It's on
right?
my birthday.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a while. So we can talk about, we can just talk about Australia, and then like the rest of the season and our expectations. And then yeah, this episode has been like a little bit over 30 minutes. I feel like it was a good time though. Like we got everything in. So I think like this time amount, I mean it can change, but I think it's pretty good. So I guess
Yeah, we can close it off. Good talking to you, Kenji.